Welcome to the Tech Insider, where we talk to the people who can give you the insights and trends that matter to you in your business. I'm Christine Grail with Leica Geosystems. I am honored to have on the show with us today retired South Dakota Highway Patrol Sergeant Kevin Kinney. Kevin spent almost 20 years with the South Dakota Highway Patrol before he retired just last year. He was the Crash Reconstruction Programs Director. He oversaw the Crash Assistance Program. He was the Assistant Coordinator of the Officer Wellness Program. Kevin is an ACTAR accredited traffic accident reconstructionist, and he has a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering. Kevin, that is quite a resume.
Well, thanks, Christine. It's one of those things that as you go through time, things just start to happen, right? And so I had a lot of people in my life that encouraged me to pursue some of those other items, like the Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. I just felt it was an important step in my career to be able to combat some of the things that I saw happening in court. And so being able to go in as a law enforcement officer, but also as having that knowledge as a mechanical engineer in the background, I feel like helped me in my career as well as now at my current job.
So, Kevin, I believe you actually started out studying civil engineering and then you took a job with the South Dakota Highway Patrol as a trooper. What led you to law enforcement?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I remember just growing up as a kid, my dad was actually on the Highway Patrol as well. He retired as a district commander or a captain with the South Dakota Highway Patrol. And there was always this desire kind of in the background of wanting to follow in his footsteps and to do that. And it looked really exciting and interesting. Every day was a little bit different. I was just really young when he actually left or retired from the Highway Patrol. And, I kept wanting to do it. My wife finally said, you can get paid to do that instead of just doing the free stuff where you do like ride alongs and such. And so I ended up going for it and I pursued it. My mom would say that it's my dad's fault. A little known fact about me is I was actually picked up from the hospital, my mom and I, when I was just an infant, by my dad, and he picked us up in a patrol car. And so on the way home, she says, all I heard was a squawking radio in the background, and that caused me to want to be in law enforcement just like him. And then I also have a brother that's in law enforcement, and he just recently retired down in the San Antonio area. And so it was always something that I kind of just had this desire to do, and so I went ahead and pursued it. And thankfully, I've had great support with my family to be able to do that. So.
Well, and having a father in law enforcement, you had a good understanding going in of what you would and of what you would experience while you were on the job. But there's still, until you're actually in it day in and day out, there's still maybe some glamour associated with the idea of it. I wonder if there was ever a point where you had to stop and think like, wow, this isn't really what I expected, or this is maybe I'm in over my head. What was one of your biggest memories of being in law enforcement?
Well, I want to say that it's hard to pick out specific memories that I have about the Highway Patrol. There's so many different aspects that I really enjoyed. The most difficult time for me was when I was going through the academy. It was an up and down roller coaster of emotions for me. I was never huge into physical fitness, and so it really challenged me. Our academy instructor at the time was just a really good guy. I didn't really care for him at the time because he was pushing me to my limits, right? But at the same point, at the end, uh, it was that day when I graduated that made me know that I could do much more than I thought I could do, and he pushed me to those limits and helped me to see that. And so those are some of the things that I think of that those early years. But as I go through my career, I don't know if I can really pick out a specific day. I enjoyed working with my coworkers. I always tried to make it a point to meet with them for lunches and to just have those conversations so that we could just, grow in our careers together. And I really enjoyed every moment of it. Uh, the thing that probably stands out the most to me in my entire career is I took over the crash reconstruction program in about 2011. And the colonel at the time approached me later on after I got that kind of job role figured out, and he said, "Hey, we have a gap here from the families that are going through these experiences of losing a loved one." And not really giving them great support. And so I'd like you to start a program and have victim advocates that come alongside these families. And I'd say that's probably one of the things I'm really proud of in my career is that program grew from one part-time employee up to 3 full-time employees, and it's grant funded. And they come alongside of those families that have experienced the loss of a loved one. It's I guess you just don't even think about it a lot until it's reality for you. When you have a relative or a loved one that as they get older, that at some point they're gonna pass on, and so you can kind of prepare yourself. But when it comes to fatal car crashes, uh, you're not expecting that, and so it hits you a lot differently. And being able to provide somebody that can come alongside of those folks, and whether there's another driver involved and there's a court process, just helping them to understand what that all means, and what is all this court terminology, and or how do I get my loved one home because they're from a different state or a different area. Those people that I got to help hire and to work with and to develop that program, our crash assistance program, which you mentioned in the beginning, they have made me look back on my career and realize that I'm really proud of that. So that's probably the thing that's most memorable for me.
So meaningful, and I have to believe it has had such a big impact on the families that you've worked with while you were in the Highway Patrol. And it's a rough job because you see some pretty serious things happen. You're involved in documenting some very serious incidents, and I believe that even sometimes you get called in to help with, maybe it's not a crash. I think back in 2011, you were involved in mapping a shooting incident that left a couple of officers dead, and that's a hard situation to be in, right?
Yeah, that one hit close to home because I live in Rapid City, South Dakota, and we had 2 officers that were killed in the line of duty, and one that was injured in the line of duty. Uh, and that was back when our agency was still just utilizing total stations. And one of the things I specifically remember about that case, as I was working with my team to go out and document that, is we documented like a 6 block area where down one particular street, uh, because there was a bullet that was located inside of a blockbuster that was about 6 blocks away. And I remember documenting where it entered the side of the building, and then inside the store, where it came into the inside of the store, and just connecting those 2 points where they were located, and they were only 6 to 8 inches apart, and then drawing a line through that. It went straight back through bullet casings at the scene that was blocks away. And so that really stood out to me as, man, this is definitely accurate. It's powerful evidence that just is able to show what occurred at this scene. And so yeah, that's I've been involved in numerous officer involved shootings, where as far as documenting those, the Division of Criminal Investigation has contacted me throughout my career to come and document those for them, utilizing the equipment that we had, and that was the Leica Total Station at the time. So
Well, it's so hard to lose officers in the line of duty to be part of that. It's such a tight knit community that it does hit close to home when that happens. But to be part of putting together those puzzle pieces and to show what actually happened because you have the technology, that has to feel really good. It's has to be a very satisfying feeling. And that probably drove you to keep learning about technology as more technologies emerged, as technology continued to evolve. Talk a little bit about the technology evolution that you saw over your career. You mentioned total stations. You might have been involved long enough to even remember hand measurements and to do some of that documentation. And now here you are using laser scanning and helping other agencies with laser scanning. But talk about your journey for a minute through technology.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough that when I started with the Highway Patrol, I have a guy that I consider my mentor, Gene Barthel, who was a sergeant with the Highway Patrol, and his passion was crash reconstruction and figuring out what happened in these crashes. And so he was one of the instructors at the time, and we learned to do hand measurements. They told us that if technology fails, we have to have a way to still document these things. So we were doing baseline offset, just measuring so that we would be able to at least document a scene if we had to, or if we weren't able to get that technology that we needed to the scene. If you're not familiar with South Dakota, the weather can change fairly rapidly here. And so, if you're at a scene and there's a snowstorm moving in or a thunderstorm or something like that, you want to be able to make sure that you get that evidence documented in a timely manner. And so there was a few scenes that we did with baseline offset, and it works. But having a total station is definitely, from going from baseline offset using just a tape measure is a game changer, right? You go to being able to document points all over your scene. They're documented in 3D. The interesting part is that they're not they're not really displayed in court at that time in 3D. It's really just a two-dimensional piece of paper that shows you where things were located, and so it's like reading a book. You have to be able to tell the story that goes along with that. And so as time progressed, we saw 3D scanning come into play. And so I really pushed to get the Highway Patrol into 3D scanning. And our first scanner was a Leica C10 scanner. And so we were able to get two of those, one for each side of the state, and we used them all over. We used them at crash scenes, we used them at crime scenes, we used them at a number of, like I said before, officer-involved shootings where we were documenting those for the Division of Criminal Investigation. And so we've really seen that change. Where some of the lack comes in for that is just getting those documents or those ideas presented in court. Court wants to be able to see that they're true and tested, and they have been, but still it's a slow process to get them to accept some of that stuff. So now we can actually take somebody and put them into a 3D environment using virtual reality. They can be actually placed right back at the scene, and they can look and see what we saw when we were there as officers. And so technology has just continued to change over time. And it's not just scanning technology that's changed. It's all kinds of technology. It used to be the safety mechanism in a car was just a seatbelt, and now they have all kinds of different airbags and side impact airbags, and it just continues to evolve and become safer and safer for occupants of vehicles. So.
Well, and it makes things safer for those who have to go and document the scenes as well, because obviously you want to get in there, get the data that you need, and get out of there as quickly as possible. Open the roadway. Nobody has any patience anymore, and nowadays you have to worry too about everyone on their cell phone. So it's a hard place to be in highway patrol these days. Going back to when you first started using laser scanning, what did you think the first time you saw a scene that was scanned with a laser scanner?
Well, I knew that the technology was there and it existed and it was good, and we ended up purchasing the scanners. And I remember not having really documented any scene with a 3D scanner, but we had the equipment and we were receiving our training, and our instructor did a fantastic job getting us trained up. And the very last day of our training, it was a Friday evening. I remember getting a call at home at about 9 o'clock, and we had a two vehicle head on crash. And I had the instructor's phone number and I knew he was still in town. So I called him and I said, "Hey, we just got a call out for a fatal crash. You want to go with?" And he joined us. And so it was just that level of commitment to help us be successful. And then the fire department had never seen the scanner before. And so they were all wondering what we were doing. And being able to show them at the end how much more information you were able to capture was just really impressive. They thought it was great. They were willing to put in the extra time for making sure that we had what we need when it came to lighting and things like that. And so the command staff, when they saw it, they were just super impressed that you could actually go back and see things. It's amazing. Like just being able to, I've been to scenes before where we forgot something and forgot a measurement, or we just didn't realize we needed it. And being able to document something in 3D has allowed us to just go into the software now and get those points that we needed. And so it's definitely changed the way that you approach things. But that doesn't mean that it's without fault either. You know, you have to have proper training and make sure you're putting in the time and the effort to do it correctly, so that you can end up with a really good product at the end.
Well, and going back to the Leica ScanStation C10, that was state of the art at the time. I think it was about 50,000 points per second. Now we have the RTC 360, which is more than 2 million points per second. So you're talking significantly faster, significantly better imagery. It's just the technology just continues to evolve. We have handheld scanners that capture everything while you walk. But with the laser scanning, I know there's still applications for the old fashioned technology, I'm going to say in air quotes, like total stations, right? In crash reconstruction.
Yeah, I've found that just because you have a 3D scanner doesn't mean that's the answer to everything. I think each piece of equipment serves its own role. You have total stations that are good at documenting 2D stuff, or not even 2D, but 3D. Uh, for smaller scenes where your 3D scanner can come in and do it all in 3 dimension, right? And so you have different purposes for those two things. The same goes for just taking a baseline offset measurement. There's times where that's the appropriate way to document what you have. You look at drones. Uh, Drones are fantastic for capturing stuff prior to your scene, and then combining it with a 3D scan to get that real nice detail of all the evidence that's right at the intersection. Let's say if you're documenting a crash scene, and so each one has its limitations. I think like drones, I know drones are a big thing right now. They do have limitations. If the weather's bad, you're not going to be able to fly your drone in bad weather. We can still scan with our scanner in bad weather. And so there's ways to combine them and to utilize those things together, and they all have their own purpose and they serve their own purpose. And so it's kind of nice to be able to combine them together and have a full toolkit, if you will.
Well, and I wonder to what extent, too, the public safety agencies are even aware of some of the latest technologies available in things like total stations, where you have tilt poles, and GPS, where you have the ability to tilt and take imagery with that technology. Do you find that the agencies you talk to are up to speed on all the capabilities of what they might consider the older technologies?
I think the thing that I find is the larger agencies typically have a better idea and feeling of some of the technology that's out there. It doesn't mean that they're completely current, but they have a pretty decent idea of what's available with 3D scanning. And then as the agency's size starts to get smaller, I think there's sometimes people that are just technology driven people that love technology. They are able to see that stuff, and they try to push it for their agencies, but sometimes it's out of reach because they feel like they can't afford it, or they don't know that they would have the time or energy or training ability to be able to use it. But in reality, there's lots of different ways to be able to fund a project. Whether it's through grants or just making sure you budget so that you're in a timely manner, I guess is the easiest way to say it. Government budgets just take more time, and so I think that the smaller agencies have more difficulty getting their hands on it, but I think that they're aware of it, I guess.
Well, and ultimately, in a crash scene documentation and reconstruction, your primary goals are getting that scene documented and cleared as quickly as possible. You want to stay safe while you're out there. You want to make sure that you capture everything accurately and comprehensively so that you have all that data there. You can go back and review it and really get to the truth of what happened in that situation. Can you think over your career, and I'm sure there are many examples, but are there any examples where technology really was key to being able to identify what happened in that situation?
I was thinking through this a little while ago, and it's almost hard to determine a specific case where I was like, man, technology just took care of that one. Really, it's about the people that are behind the equipment that are utilizing it in a way that is appropriate, uh, and that they're capturing the correct information. Because if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And so, uh, all the times that I've used 3D scanning or any technology like that, I think it's had a benefit. Like if you look at any case where you have like an intersection crash, being able to scan or to get data that's prior to that intersection gives you additional information that you didn't have before if you didn't document it well. And so, whether that's line of sight, viewpoints, being able to know slopes on the roadway. So if the cars are traveling up or down a hill, you can adjust your drag factors. There's so many different things that go into a crash reconstruction, and so being able to have those things at your fingertips while you're doing your investigation is very important.
Well, and the people and the knowledge that they bring to the table is so critical. But, there are certainly agencies where it's an uphill battle for them to get the technology they need. They're fighting with, hopefully not their police chief, but maybe in some cases it's the community that they're serving, and obviously budget plays a role, and it's a struggle sometimes to be able to get that technology. And I think, having someone internally that understands how important that technology is can certainly be a benefit. Did you ever encounter a situation where you felt like you had to really push hard to get the technology you needed?
Well, I remember back when we were documenting officer involved shooting scenes with a total station, and I knew that 3D scanning was the way that we really should be going. And so every time I was at one of those scenes, I would talk to the lead supervisor for DCI and just say, "Hey, this would be really great if we could 3D scan this." And he was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" So then I would show him videos, and I'd be like, "Look at this. If you watch this video, it's going to show you what kind of product you can get out of a 3D scan versus what we're doing now." And unfortunately, after a couple more officer involved shootings, I continued to press on him. And eventually, his agency and our agency decided, you know what, this would be a benefit for both of us. And so we were able to join together. That's one way that I think that there's opportunity for smaller agencies to join with maybe a, a response team or emergency response team that's in the area, or emergency preparedness, uh, to be able to join together and fund some of those projects together so that more than one agency can benefit from a piece of equipment. But yeah, there's lots of different hurdles. I think the unfortunately one of the biggest hurdles I've encountered when I was working with getting technology kind of infused into our agency was our IT folks, and it's nothing against them personally. They have a job to do. They're trying to keep our information technology infrastructure safe, and so sometimes, but that's a hurdle that you have to cross, right? And so being able to explain to them what it is you're doing, how it works, uh, that can be a big challenge sometimes. And so just being able to have other resources of people that have went through it before that can help you, I think is just a key to being successful. The other thing that I would just say is just don't give up. Like, you need to keep staying in people's ears. That's what I did. I just continued to tell people, like, hey, we need this, we need this, we need this. And it's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, I guess, sometimes. And we were able to get that implemented in our agency. And since then, we haven't looked back. Like, it's been very beneficial. And anywhere you implement that into an agency, I think is going to be very beneficial for them.
It's great advice. Don't give up. If you know you need it, keep pushing, and make sure that you have educated yourself so that you can then in turn educate the people around you so they understand the need for the technology. With so many different technologies coming along though, with how rapidly technology has evolved, how do you evaluate technology so that you know what it is you need?
I think that's definitely a key when you're looking at technology is you need to see how it's going to impact you. And uh, one of my favorite parts about my current job is being able to meet with agencies and to let them to like put the equipment into their hands and just to let them see that the ease of use of the equipment and that there's not 100 different settings. It's literally four settings. You can choose what settings you want and you push a button and it scans. You have to learn your techniques of where you want to scan from, what it is you're trying to collect, that type of stuff. But evaluating it in a way that shows that it's easy for any officer to use, I think is just really important. When you look at the turnover in the law enforcement world right now, with just everything that's been going on, uh, being able to train somebody new into using those pieces of equipment is critical because there's people coming in and out of departments all the time. And so that's probably one of my favorite things to do is as far as helping people evaluate the technology is actually showing them how it works, putting it in their hands and letting them see the ease of use, because there's been huge changes from the time that we started with our C10 to now using the RTC 360, pairing it with Cyclone Field 360 and just showing how easy it is to register or your scans together. It's a game changer. And so that's what I would encourage people to do is make sure you get the equipment in your hands, see how it functions. And, I leave every demo with giving them a thumb drive or something that shows what we scanned, how we registered it, and what a final court deliverable would look like. And I do that before I leave. And so that's, I think, an important thing to show that it's easy on the back end as well.
Yeah, it's one thing to look at everything that's available on social media to see all the, magazine stories or whatever publicity might be out there, marketing material, but it's quite another to get your hands on it and to actually run through it yourself and to see that it really isn't intimidating. I mean, everything that we've done lately has been all about ease of use, right? And I don't think people understand how easy it is to use until they actually get it in their hands
Right.
and start pushing those
The,
buttons.
just to add to what you were saying there, it's interesting, that we talk about ease of use, and it is easy to use, and it's fast. I think sometimes the limiting factor in our investigation becomes us, right? As people, it can scan fast. You don't have a lot of time to sit and take pictures and do all this other stuff. So we become the limiting factor in some way, and that just tells me that technology is just continuing to get better and better. So.
It is. It is. So you had a lot of experience with Leica Geosystems technology over your career. And then last year you joined Leica Geosystems in the public safety group. And so now you work with agencies trying to help them understand technology, help them understand what technology would be a benefit to them. Why Leica though? What is it about Leica Geosystems that you believe really benefits public safety professionals in what they do every day?
When I came on the highway patrol, I would say that we used Leica from basically day one. I was hired in August of 2003, and I think it was just later that year that they purchased a whole bunch of total stations for the whole state. And so I kind of grew up in the Leica family, I guess. And so one of the things that I noted as I was doing that, because I evaluated other equipment as well as I was with the agency, is that I knew I could count on my Leica equipment. It was built well. Like some of the total station, well, the majority of the total stations that were purchased back in 2003 are still in use today with the Highway Patrol. They're still out there functioning. And so just being able to see the number one, the quality of the instruments, but then also looking at the public safety group, it was exciting to see that it wasn't just, 'cause, the public safety group, 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 it wasn't just, 'cause, the it wasn't just somebody that's a salesman coming and trying to get you to buy something, but it was somebody that was from the actual field, that had a background and knowledge in the equipment and had the practical application of the product. And I just have always felt like we've been supported well. When I was with the Highway Patrol, I never felt like uh, that we didn't get the support we needed. And we worked through a Leica dealer, and so and they were fantastic as well. And so it's just something that I've noticed that I've really enjoyed, the camaraderie. Being in law enforcement, that's something that you develop. It's part of the officer safety and officer wellness portion that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Is you develop those relationships with people, and we're able to kind of continue to do that now that I'm in this position. I'm able to build those same relationships. They see that I came from law enforcement. They know that I'm there to help them out and to show them the technology. And we're also realistic with each other. We're like, hey, if you need the RTC 360, let's get you set up so that that's what you have. If you need the BLK 360 G2, let's get you set up so that you have the appropriate equipment. I don't feel like there was ever a time that we were pressured to buy just the top of the line piece of equipment because that's what we were trying to sell. It was always what's appropriate for the situation that you have at hand, and that's about building customer relationships. And so that's probably why. Well, that's why I chose Leica in the long run, is because I just knew that I could get that support, and I was working with a great team at the same time. So.
Those relationships are so key, and we're in a situation now where you can buy just about anything you need off the shelf. If you need a drone, you go buy a drone. If you need a total station, just go
Right.
pick one up. You can get it through e-commerce, right? But if you
Right.
really want a partner to walk alongside you and help you understand how to get the best use out of that technology, because so much of today's technology is underutilized, and then to help you develop that vision for what's coming next, that's where those relationships really come into play. So, working closely with someone like you, working with those who are on our public safety team, can really help agencies understand what's happening now, how they can get the best use out of their technology with the people that they have, how to extend their resources with technology, and really give them a vision for what's coming down the line. Because there's a lot of exciting things happening, right?
Absolutely. It's, one of the most recent things that has come out is Reality Cloud Studio, and just being able to see what it can do is just amazing. Like, it gets better by the day. Like, they're working on it hard to make updates to different things that are being requested, and to see the quality of the product that comes out of that, and as a way to share your information. You can be on scene, upload things into Reality Cloud, and give people that are back at a different area an idea of what you're dealing with. And so things just continue to change. I've always said that. Even earlier I mentioned about like seatbelts and airbags in cars. I think to myself, oh, I don't think there's anything else you could do to protect people in a car. And then next thing you know, you turn the corner and, oh, there's this new technology that's there that's helping keep people safe. And so same thing with this field. There's just things that are always coming out, and you just got to stay kind of in the loop and don't miss out on that. And so that's one of the fun parts of my job, is being able to connect with agencies and show them some of the new things that are coming and help them prepare to incorporate that into their own workflow.
Is there anything you've encountered on this side of things as a technology advocate that you didn't really anticipate?
You know, I think I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think that the hardest part for me sometimes was just working with information technology, the bit folks or whatever. Uh, Sometimes I felt like I was beating my head against a wall, just trying to get things where they needed to be. And the neat part about that, though, is even in that, I was developing relationships with those folks, and as they saw the need, they understood what they had to do on their side to be able to make it better for law enforcement as well. And so I think sometimes the biggest challenge is just it takes time. Time is what you need. Funding projects is not easy. You have to plan ahead. It needs to be in a budget, or it needs to be in a grant, and so those take time as well. And just because you put it in a grant doesn't mean it's going to get approved. And so just having the tenacity and the willingness to continue to drive forward is what's important.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions you think law enforcement professionals have about scene documentation technology?
Uh, I think probably the biggest misconception is just that some people think that it'll do everything for you, right? You just put the scanner there and you push the button and you walk away and it knows what to do. But in reality, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's about your training. It's about making sure that you're putting the proper inputs into the machine, and then somebody still has to evaluate the information that you put in, right? And so taking those measurements for the length of your skid marks at a crash scene, or looking at trajectory rods and determining the bullet path reconstruction portion, or your blood pattern analysis. All those things are important, and it doesn't just do it for you, but you have to collect the correct information so that you can do an appropriate evaluation of what you've collected. And so uh, I'll just stand by what I said earlier, which is if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And so we want to make sure that people continue to receive new training, updated training, and stay current in the field of 3D scanning and forensic mapping and diagramming.
Yeah, with all the technology advances, with all the automation and now artificial intelligence, that people aspect is still so important. You still need people who understand what they're doing out in the field. And even though technology is a significant benefit for those agencies that are struggling to find enough people, so it is helping to bridge that gap, you still need to make sure your people are trained and able to use the technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you have any insights or advice for someone who's just now getting started on their career in accident reconstruction?
I think the same thing applies if you're working towards just getting into crash reconstruction. There's so many different facets of the reconstruction field. Uh, you can't be a specialist in every single one of them, and so you kind of have to decide what it is that you want to do in some way. There's a general level of training that you need to be able to reconstruct crashes, and I've received a lot of good training over the years. Uh, One of my strong mentors was John Daly, and I've had many classes with him. He's the one that actually encouraged me to go back to school and to continue learning. Uh, and so that's a part of it, making sure that you're continuing your training, figure out where it is that you want to kind of specialize and be good at that, be the go-to person, and pick up any type of training you can. I mean, there's numerous webinars that are offered through different crash organizations like Maytai or NAPARS. They're just all over the country, and so you can find ways to uh, continue your training that way. But then there's also conferences. Being able to get together and to go to different conferences and learn from speakers and the people that you're around are just important ways that you can continue to help yourself grow. And so place yourself in those situations. And then again, I'll just say, don't give up. There's so many times where things will get hard, whether it's funding to get to the conference, or just not having 100% support at your agency yet. Maybe that's what it is. Don't give up. Just continue to go out and strive to get that training. And in the long run, it's going to prove to be very valuable for you.
There's so much opportunity for growth with technology, with the way things are progressing, so much opportunity emerging. I'm curious what you find to be the most exciting possibilities as we look ahead to the future. You already mentioned Reality Cloud Studio and the potential to do even more with the digital twin in forensics, and that reality capture that's taking place with laser scanning and imagery. Is that what excites you the most right now? Is there anything else that you find just exciting to you as you look ahead?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. I think there's tons of applications for Reality Cloud Studio. I think of school safety. You can go in and scan a school. If you have an incident at a school, you could provide that layout to the school, uh, to responding officers, so that they know what they're going into and what the layout of that building is. You can tie it together with video, just showing there's just so many possibilities that you have to be able to do that. I see, like the future with firefighting. I see it scanning in those, and I always thought I had a couple of fire investigators at scenes where I scanned. They were just super impressed with the scan because they could actually see the burn patterns. As a crash reconstructionist, I thought maybe they were losing their mind, but it's actually they're just specialized training and being able to read that, and the scanner allows them to help do that. Again, the other thing I would mention is just the virtual reality component. I don't think we highlight that enough sometimes, but really being able, excuse me, being able to put somebody into a crash or a crime scene so that they can see it for themselves. It's like saying a picture is worth 1,000 words, but actually being there and seeing it and experiencing it is just as powerful. And so I think there's lots of different technology on the horizon that's gonna come along and just continue to evolve and change what we're doing. And so I'm looking forward to all of it.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the virtual reality and giving people that firsthand experience on the scene. We think of that in terms of a jury trial, but I would think it's also valuable for someone like an investigator who's trying to, for insurance company, who's trying to figure out what happened, right? And there are other private sector people who need to understand what happened on that scene. And so all these technologies bring that scene to them in a way that they can understand it and immerse themselves in it. And again, you get so much more justice that way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's insurance investigators, attorneys, juries, judges. There's so many. It's like you can't list them all, right? I mean, there's just so many different ways that you can put somebody back into a scene, and when you've seen it firsthand, it's one thing. But to be able to go back and immerse yourself in a different way, but it becomes realistic, so that you can use that to evaluate the situation. That's a big deal, and so there's lots of different opportunities out there for that.
Well, I know over the course of your career, you ended up testifying a number of times, probably because you were one of the primary investigators and you had to go into court. You had to share what you discovered. I think you were involved in a pretty high profile case a couple of years ago where the attorney general for the state of South Dakota was under fire for a really serious situation, and there was a death involved. And so I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, but I'm sure for someone who has to go in and testify under those circumstances, you're just doing your job. But obviously, in a high
Right.
profile case, it's maybe a little bit tricky. And so, what could you share from that experience for someone who is maybe newer to the profession, who hasn't yet found themselves in that situation, but probably will at some point in their career?
Yeah, I think that uh, that case was definitely something that it wasn't on my checklist or bucket list of things to do. But the fact of the matter is that as law enforcement, the majority of people that I know in law enforcement, their goal is uh, to to share facts and to share the truth, and that's what we did in that case. We documented. We worked alongside the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and we were essentially responsible for the reconstruction of the crash. I was the on-site supervisor, and I worked with my reconstruction coordinator from District 1, or up in the northeast corner of the state. And he did a fantastic job documenting, working through all the potential scenarios, and just having documentation. We used a total station on that scene, we used a scanner, and there was drone stuff as well. And so being able to put all those things together and utilize those things to be able to put the facts of the case together, that was really important. And I would say that probably the uh, most terrifying part of the whole thing was I had testified in court numerous times. I still, get that little knot in my stomach when I'd have to go testify in court, and it's not because I was worried about that I did anything wrong. It was more about I want to make sure I'm doing it right, and so I would get nervous about just making sure I wasn't going above and beyond facts, but I was just stating facts. And in that particular case, I was the one that was selected to uh, testify to the Senate in an impeachment hearing. And it's a little bit nerve wracking when you walk up to a podium. You're used to sitting at a stand to be able to testify. And I was standing at a podium, and directly behind me was the lieutenant governor. And then you have all the senators out on the floor, and just being able to answer questions. It was definitely nerve wracking, but at the end of the day, I can walk away from that and say that what I did was my job. I went in and I stated facts, and the facts are what proved that case. And so it's not something I would wish upon anybody, but just know that if you're doing what's right, it's sometimes tough, but it is doable. And to just stand your ground and make sure that you're being honest and sharing the facts that they as they lie out in the scene. So.
Yeah, and if you've collected that data correctly, the data tells the story. The data doesn't lie. And at the end of the day, that's what everyone's trying to get to, is the truth, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot that can be learned from your career for sure. So I really appreciate you sharing all of that with us. Is there any podcasts or maybe shows or books or anything that you've discovered lately that you would want to share with our audience that you think might be encouraging or inspirational or maybe even entertaining to them?
I it's funny because my family would say that I don't read a lot of normal books. I read a lot of I guess I consider myself a nerd in that way. I read a lot of physics or math or Reconstruction type books. So they're like, that's not a normal book. Uh, if I would say the last fiction book, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, but my wife is an author. So the last two books that I've read that were fiction books were hers, and they're based on law enforcement and some officer safety wellness stuff. Uh, they were actually both very good. So Dakota Peace and is the first one in her series, and it's about a law enforcement officer. Or it's about a dispatcher that experiences some post traumatic stress and ends up meeting a trooper, and they solve this case together. And the trooper is not me, just so you know. Like, but it was actually a very good book. I told her her biggest downfall is most guys aren't going to want to read her book because the cover is fairly girly. And so but it was actually a very good book. And so, but as far as other books, I think probably one of the ones I read a lot of leadership type books. I really enjoy uh, seeing if I'm going down the right path. And so one of the books that I read not too long ago was it's called The Mentor Leader by Tony Dungy. And I really appreciate his style of leadership and how he's they would call it the mentor leader. So coming alongside, being willing to do the job. I remember my first job as a 14-year-old was working at Taco Bell. Really exciting stuff in the fast food industry, right? Everyone's dream, maybe not. But my supervisor there was one of those people that was just like a mentor leader. She would ask you to clean the bathrooms, but she would show you how to clean the bathrooms, and she wasn't afraid to do it herself. And so having a leader that's willing to come alongside of you and to do the work with you and not just tell you what to do is really important. And so I read some of those types of leadership books. And then kind of on the other side of stuff like podcasts, my family was probably really sick and tired of listening to Dave Ramsey. I know that we go on car trips, and I just listen. It keeps my mind engaged as I'm driving, but it's also caused our family to have a lot of financial peace, and that's removed a ton of stress off of our family. Is not worrying about what's going to happen in the future, because we were able to knock down our debt and do that and follow kind of those principles. And so it just, when I hear somebody's like deeply in debt, like it just like, oh man, my heart just like cringes up, and I'm like, yikes, that's not fun. And it just adds a component of stress to people's lives that doesn't have to be there. And so those are some of the things that I listen to when I'm in the car driving on those long road trips. So.
Well, excellent recommendations. Thank you so much, Kevin, for speaking with us today. Appreciate having you on the show and hope to have you back at some point in the future.
I appreciate it. I know that I've just witnessed you within the Leica family over time, all the different things that you've led in webinars, and I've always appreciated your ability to pull good information out of us and make us look good. So thank you for that.
It's so much fun, and I don't have to make you look good. You make yourself look good, and you make
Yeah,
everyone around you look good. So thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate it.
yeah, you have a good day.
Be sure to check out the description for additional resources on this topic. If you enjoyed this content, give us a like. If you'd like to see more of this content, be sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Tech Insider.